What's going on, y'all? I'm KMBest. He's Lambie Series, and we are 8 Cubes. Lambie, I'm going to let you bring us into the first topic here, which is, of course, Elsa Bounce. You are absolutely a fanatic for this deck right now, so take me through it.
I've always loved Bounce as an archetype. I mean, I did get this thing with Bounce like 3 months back. But anyway, the point is, Bounce is one of those decks that I feel is very different from a lot of decks in Marvel Snap because you can go very tall and allocate a lot of points in very random places at like any time. Like your opponent doesn't know where your points will go, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's a deck that like has a lot of skill expression, has a lot of freedom of expression as well. Like you can really put your points anywhere. So I really like that kind of deck. And Elsa really takes it over the top. The obvious stuff like Kitty Pride keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Also, Mysterio once in a while can get like +3 on each lane if you set it up
Yeah.
right. So it's really a lot of points. And I think it's the deck that abuses the Elsa mechanic the best simply because of the way the deck is built, right? It puts cards everywhere. I think the deck is a bit fragile though. Like as much as I really like the deck, I think it's tier 1. It's very fragile because it's vulnerable to like every counter card, which is like Shadow King, sometimes Mobius, sometimes Wave, most often Sandman, which is resurging in the meta. So like I feel like the deck is good, but it is very vulnerable, and I would definitely not recommend it to an inexperienced player. But if you are like me, a fan of this deck, and you know how to pilot this kind of stuff, this is definitely something that you should consider.
So one of the cards that I actually wanted to talk to you about, like 3 specific cards here, because they're 3 cards that I thought were pretty inefficient in the archetype. And I'll tell you what they are. Falcon and Beast, and then Iron Man goes in and out, right? Iron Man is awesome, but clunky. Falcon and Beast, I actually, when I played Elsa Bounce, I was like, these are not helping me at all. Like, these are, I ended up on a bounce list. I was like, okay, I can't deal with these. Like, they don't do the same thing that the Elsa wants me to be doing, right? Have you found that? Are you still on that? Do you value the freedom that they give you? Beast especially was like, oh man, that like I get Mobius and this card is terrible.
So let's talk about Iron Man first. Iron Man feels okay. The funny thing about Iron Man is it's very clunky, but I feel like it's actually quite necessary because
Okay.
what you do with Iron Man is that like how we used to play Bounce, it kind of can solo a lane with like
Yes.
any one card, right? So you usually get to allocate a lot of points in one lane with like your Monkey, Mysterio, Angela stuff. Then the other lane is like Iron Man plus Bishop. Iron Man Bishop alone, I think, wins most lanes,
It
like
does.
because the Bishop just grows. So I think Iron Man is actually clunky but necessary. But on the Beast note, I do agree also that like because Beast is the like one card that's super vulnerable to Mobius, right? Because like
Yeah.
at least Falcon, it's like sort of cheaper if you see a Mobius, but Beast, the moment you see a Mobius, it's like a wasted turn, straight up wasted turn, because everything goes back, it costs full energy. So one thing I've been experimenting with is cutting Beast for Mobius, and it's actually pretty good. Falcon, on the other hand, well, because I personally play Hood, so there's some merit to playing Falcon. But yeah, no, I agree
Yeah.
that Beast is relatively inefficient at times, especially if you know they run Mobius. You can't actually safely play the Beast on curve because like you would literally waste an entire turn if they play Mobius.
Just,
So
you
it's a
just
risk.
like die.
Yeah,
Like you
you
just
just die. Yeah,
immediately die. Because you're not the kind of deck like you go downhill, right? Like you
yeah.
need those turns to matter. And if your turns don't matter, it's just like, oh man, okay.
Yeah, I guess the power ceiling is a bit higher with those 2 cards. Like you get like
Yeah.
extra points on the Bishop, on the Angela, but the risk is you are extra vulnerable as well. So I think it's really
Yes.
up to you whether you wanna take that risk.
Next up is Elsa Loki, a deck I've had a lot of success with, and I tried a bunch of different builds. I tried Swen's build, which was like wild. I made one change in Swen's build, and it was terrible. But then when I went back to his build, it was working. And then I went to Ava's build, which is very much more a traditional Loki deck with the minimum Elsa package in. And that was the one that was the most successful for me, actually, where it was just like, we're just going to put this in the Loki shell and, you know, we lose Legion, but it's fine, I guess. There's been a lot less Legion in the meta, as a side note.
Yeah.
But, like, we lose Legion, so it's fine, I guess. We'll fit the Elsa package in. We get a lot of synergy with our Kitty, our Angela. We already do that kind of thing. And that was the most successful list that I found for Loki Elsa. It's kind of, you know, boring. It's like, yeah, what do? We put 3 new cards in the Loki shell, and then we Loki people. It's still good. Don't get me wrong. It's just like I was hoping there would be some more like fun stuff, like what Swen cooked up with like Maria Hill, Agent 13. All your things cost 1 that give you cards, and you play Falcon. I was like, that's awesome. That's such a cool thing. But I did not have nearly the success with that as I did with just boring Luke Cage, Mobius, Loki.
Right, so I actually tried only so far the Swen version of the deck, which is like you said, the a lot of random generation stuff,
Yeah.
and there was even a Falcon in there, I think, which I
There
kind of
was.
got the list from you, which you got from Swen, which I did not realize you got from Swen. So yeah, I played the list a little bit. That deck is actually more similar to Bounce than I thought, just that
Yes.
without the monkey. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's just like monkeyless Bounce, so it's a bit less points than Bounce, but you get random generation, which lets you scam wins here and there, and then you get the Loki thing, which is basically just doing Loki things. I think it's like a worse version of Bounce. Like
Yeah.
playing that version of Loki is like a slightly worse version of Bounce. So I feel like I'm a bit undecided. Like maybe the better Loki is just the straight up normal Loki, the one
Yep.
with like pre-patch Loki, you
Yep.
know. So
Just
I'm really undecided. Yeah,
boring Loki. Like, just
boring Loki.
play Loki, hope it works. I do feel like I know this sounds weird, but there was a ton of Mobius on the climb, and then
Mhm.
after the like in Infinite, I feel like there've been less Mobiuses. I don't really understand that, but I do feel like Loki is a card whose fortunes rise in sync with the amount of Mobius right now. If
Mhm.
there's so much Mobius that your Loki is like only kind of good most of the time, then you probably end up playing something else. But if there's like a decrease in the amount of Mobius in the meta, suddenly Loki is immediately the best thing to be doing again. And it's a very thin line between it's a good deck you can play and oh my god, it's unbelievable. And that Mobius is holding that line right now, I think.
Yeah, so I completely agree. And the thing is that's the thing, because like Loki is slightly being pushed down in the meta because everybody is playing Mobius,
Yep.
right? Like there's just like Mobius everywhere. So yeah, I don't know where this deck will go in the near future, but I don't see the Mobius play rate dropping, so maybe it's gonna stay like in control.
Here's a deck I think is actually just mid and would not recommend. It's Elsa Move. I get the appeal. I get it, but I think that there are just better things to be doing right now than your little mid-rangey let's move around Elsa stuff where it's just like all right, first of all, Silk doesn't work with that the way you want it to. Like Silk
Yep.
does not do the things you want it to in that deck. The one thing that this deck did have going for it for me was like Elsa Jeff into Elsa Vision is really, really, really strong. Like that
Yep.
is a very powerful play. You go like Elsa Jeff, Elsa Vision, Eliath. It's an extremely, extremely dangerous play. But the rest of what the deck is doing, I like. I'll be honest. I actually just put those cards into the Brood deck. Right? I was like, all right, we're just gonna play Elsa, Jeff, Vision, Eliath in Brood, and just like that's better, right? And the issue is it kind of was because I just put more points on the board when I'm playing Forge Brood Abs Man than you do when you're playing Move. And it's like a little bit awkward for this deck right now, in my opinion. It's also got a worse Loki matchup because the current Loki decks are usually hybridizing with Elsa, which means they fill the board up, which means when you get Loki'd as a Brood deck, you end up giving them a lot of cards they aren't really able to do things with because they fill the board up. But if you get Loki'd as the move deck, you're still just dead. Like, you still just totally eat it. What are your thoughts on this list right now?
Okay, so this last 1 minute that you talked about was like quite eye-opening and perfect for me because like I firstly the Elsa move I realized when I played it is very copium per se. Like you mentioned, the only thing I really like doing, and I keep doing it because I think it's actually really good, is I
It's
like to go
awesome.
Elsa Vision. Like Elsa Vision is
It's
insane, dude.
so
Like
good.
it's 11 and it flies around. It's like baby
Oh,
Shuri
God.
or whatever.
It's
Yeah, that I
amazing.
love. But
Yeah.
everything else feels weird because like the Silk sometimes jumps away. The Craven you don't want it in the Elsa lane.
Mm-hmm.
You want to like shift into the Craven. So like sometimes you just can't play your cards and get the buffs quick enough with the Elsa move stuff. So I think Elsa move might be a bit more copium than people think, and I guess we're on the same page here. All right, so Elsa Brood, very interesting. I think this is mainly something that I didn't realize, but I tried Elsa Brood and it felt a bit weird. But
It
then
is.
KM literally just mentioned that he played Vision in Elsa Brood, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because the only thing I really like to do with Elsa move was play Vision and get it buffed by Elsa. So if you're playing Vision with Elsa in a Brood deck, I guess it's better because you get like a
Right.
moving 11 power body and then you get the
Yes.
Brood buffs and stuff like that. So explain to me how's your experience with this deck because I have not actually
Uh,
played this version of the
okay.
deck.
So my experience with this deck was everyone knows what you're doing. So you have to keep your games low leverage, right? If someone is snapping on you and you're snapping back, you better know exactly what they're doing. Like this is a deck that everyone knows about, and there's still so much weird stuff out there. My win rate with it was like 50 and 25. It was like really, really,
Oh.
really good. But I lost a ton of 8-cubers. So my cube rate suffered. And I think that that is either a lesson in I'm very unlucky or a lesson in you need to understand the quality of your deck in terms of if you're going to play something that's a known quantity early in the metagame, people are going to know what you're doing better than you're going to know what they're doing. And that asymmetry tends to favor them in high leverage situations. So that's the one thing. The other thing about the deck is it's absurdly clunky. Like, it's very, very clunky because you don't have a lot of options for good plays early, right? Your good plays early are always, okay, Forge or Elsa into Brood or Mista Sinister into either Brood or the Abs Man on the previous play, right? Like, those are the only things you can do. And so there are going to be these hands where you're just like, oh, this doesn't do anything. And you need to avoid getting snapped in those scenarios, and you need to not stick in these games like, oh, I'll top deck out of it, because you could, but you're not likely to. And if you don't top deck out of it, you're locked in for 2, you're getting juiced. And avoiding being juiced for cubes with a deck like this, I feel like that's a really important strategy. I know Young Wave, the player who hit rank 1 with Brood Abs type stuff, he was always, when playing me, very risk averse, very calculated, very willing to accept a snap, but usually not go to high leverage unless he had a very strong idea of what he was doing. And the deck also involves just a lot of guessing games, a lot of moving a Jeff and a Vision and playing an Alioth and being like, I think this is happening. And if you get those wrong, I mean, I can tell you for sure that cost me 16 cubes today. I missed 2 Alioth snipes for 16 cubes, and that will happen to you. Like, it's not even necessarily a bad play, but it will happen sometimes because you need to make those reads properly, and if you don't, you're in trouble.
Okay, I got a legit question because maybe
Yo.
this is obvious, but like I never actually thought about this. But how does Elsa work? Like let's say you have
Oh,
Brood
I
and
know what
Elsa
you're
on the
asking.
board.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the way it works is the card has to be placed in the 4th position. So if you go
Okay.
Brood Jeff on 5, Jeff does not get
Okay.
the buff. But if you already had a Brood there and then you put the Jeff into the 4th position, Jeff would get the buff.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. So this deck, I feel like is because of the Jeff and the whole vision thing. I guess there's a bit more flexibility, but at the same time,
Mhm.
your lane's also generally clogged because there's Brutes and Abs, man. So there's like not many places you can actually move the vision. Where it's like you move the vision out of the lane to ally of that lane, that kind of thing. It's like
Yes,
kind
it's
of
that.
clear cut.
It's definitely
Kind
that.
of clear cut.
Yeah. It's very much like your opponent will have a pretty good idea of what you're doing, and that is a downside.
Yeah.
Next up, free-to-play hero Shuri, just chugging along. If someone came up to me and was like, Shuri is the best deck in the game, I don't even think I could argue with them right now. Like, I think I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. I believe you.
Yep.
It's just really good. And I wanted to focus on Shuri here just because, like, we're talking a lot about Elsa with expensive cards, Elsa, Loki, Alioth, all that stuff. And I wanted to remind you that arguably the best deck in the game, I think neither of us would have an argument against this being the best deck in the game, is 100% Series 3. Every card in the deck is Series 3, and it's just good. Like, big numbers win games in Marvel Snap, and Shuri's a very solid play into the open meta right now. Personally, I would advise you play the Mobius Sauron list. I understand that's a little bit, iffy sounding, but you won't really want to play Mobius after turn 2 anyway. So who actually cares if you get rid of the ability? He's just in there because he's good when you do it. The same logic that you play armor, right? Like, armor sucks if you Sauron it, but she's not really there to be played after you Sauron anyway. That's just not really what you're interested in doing. Mobius in the same role is quite solid. Of course, if you don't want to play Mobius, we did talk about this as a free-to-play deck. Lizard is perfectly serviceable there. Do you have any thoughts on Shuri as an archetype?
So recently, because I've been doing a lot of like tournament stuff with Browde, we talk a lot about Shuri. He loves the deck. So the thing about Shuri Sauron in particular is that you
Yeah.
can actually afford dead cards in your deck. Like we've been talking about
Mhm.
even running stuff like Luke Cage in a Shuri Sauron deck just because it kind of can mitigate Lizard, mitigate Mary, and
Shadow
well,
King
it
too.
does. Yeah, it mitigates the Shadow King, which could hurt the Shuri Red Skull, right? So, having some dead and like maybe negated cards with Shuri Sauron is actually fine because the deck's power level is super
Yeah.
high. The deck's also, I mean, the deck's like more or less one of the best decks in the game is because it's easy to snap with. There's inevitability, right? It's just go like Sauron, Shuri, Red Skull, Taskmaster. Like they just die. Like if there's an
Just
armor
yeah.
on the board, you can't even ally of the Taskmaster. So like it's really strong. It's relatively cheap and you just can snap if you see the good hand and like if they don't have the counters, what can they do, right? It's
Yeah.
just inevitable. So it doesn't have to be a complex deck to be good. Like we talked in the start about the bounce deck being one of my favorite decks ever, but you don't really need things to be complex to be good, right? Like the Shuri Sauron deck being so simple and still wins is just perfect to climb or like get infinity tickets.
Yeah. I think if you were a free to play player, this would be the number one deck I would recommend to you, basically, without even thinking about it.
Yeah, there's one downside though. The one downside is that, like me personally, I feel like after about 10 games with this deck, I need to change that because it gets a little bit boring. But it wins. It wins without doubt.
Oh man. Next up, I saw a tweet. I'm sorry, I actually forgot who sent the tweet out, but it was like, everyone agrees Elsa is broken or busted. Why are people not mad about it the same way they were with Loki? And so I wanted to just sort of talk about this for just a little bit, which is, I think everyone agrees Elsa is strong, but people calling her busted tend to be content creators looking for clicks. So let's start there. And secondarily, it's like, and I don't want to be like looking down on people. I've done that. I totally do that. Like, it's not like we're immune from being like, yo, this is busted.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the proper description for Elsa is, she's really, really good. And that's not the same thing as what Loki was. Loki was, in our experience, like borderline unbeatable. Like there was no reason to play any other deck. And we're in a situation right now where we can both look at you with a straight face and say, yeah, you could play Shuri. That's totally fine. And like that is not the situation we were in when Loki came out. It wasn't even close. It was not that situation. You were not required to get Loki to climb high ranks. You were not required to get Elsa to climb high ranks the same way you are where you were with Loki. So that's the first thing I wanted to get out of the way. But also it's just like they're different kinds of broken, right? Like they just are different kinds of broken. And something that is undercosted is much more easily fixable than something that is breaking the rules. And Loki was breaking the rules, and Elsa is undercosted. And that's just two very different things there. I wanted to get your opinion on that, though, as well, Lamby.
Yeah, so Loki for me was firstly one of the highest win rate decks I've ever played in my life because like if you know what you're doing,
Unbelievable.
and that was also before Mobius was around,
Yes.
but I guess now it's similar, a bit less potent, but still. Loki lets you get the better parts of your opponent's deck for cheaper. Like you get your opponent's deck but cheaper. So you're playing your opponent's deck but better. Plus you get stats on the board before that with like Angela, with like collector and everything. It's like you get already stats and then you get a cheaper deck from your opponent. It's like just too much cheat in a 6 turn game. And I feel like that's not easy to deal with no matter how good your opponent is, right? They just can't deal with all
Yeah.
that stats and like energy expenditure. For Elsa, she's good. Like I'm a big fan of Elsa for sure. But Elsa is good in the right shell specifically. Like we talked about Elsa move, which was meh. Elsa Brood was just not meh, but not great. Elsa Bounce was like the only one that really abused the mechanic of Elsa super hard. And I think outside of that specific shell, Elsa is definitely not as strong as Loki because she needs a lot of moving parts to like work well together, you know? And she's not like, she doesn't break, like you said, she doesn't break the rules of
Yeah.
Marvel Snap. She's a buffer. She buffs stuff, but she doesn't like cheat that much energy to like bend the rules of a 6 turn game. So I don't think Elsa is like beyond like it's not over the top. It's just good card. But
Yeah.
maybe if it were to get nerfed, I guess maybe 3 cost, maybe +2, or +2 would hurt it so badly though. But
Yeah.
like, you know.
On that subject, there's an OTA coming out. You got any thoughts on things you'd want to see in an OTA like that?
Mm, I think Elsa. Okay, no, they wouldn't hit
They
Elsa
wouldn't
because
hit out. There's no way, right?
it's a
Yeah.
new card. Yeah, it's a new card.
Yeah.
I don't know what can they do. They can't even do anything else to Kitty Pride. I guess Mysterio, but that's not even really a problem
Okay.
because the Elsa deck has like so much counterplay. I don't know. Maybe buffs. Maybe this time we'll see buffs. What do you think? What could be buffed in like the upcoming OTA?
I've got two pitches, right? And neither
Okay.
of these are things that I think will be incredibly impactful in a real sense, but they can influence perception. Okay? Pitch number one,
Let's hear it.
Eliath to 4 power. Does that change anything?
Okay.
No, it doesn't change a single thing about the card. It very, very minimal change. But I think people seeing Eliath get nerfed will be like, oh, maybe we'll take that out. Maybe we'll take that out. Maybe
Yes.
we'll play Doctor Doom instead. Right?
It's a stigma. Yeah, it's a stigma.
Yes, it's about that. Pitch number two, Sandman to 5/4. That's my second pitch, which is, all right, can we solve this by just putting Sandman in decks and and slowing the game down? I hate that one a little bit, but the issue, like, I hate Sandman, I really do. But here's the thing: Sandman metas sort of solve themselves a lot of the time, right? Because there ends up being the Sandman deck, and then you remember this, it was Patriot last time, just whatever
the Brood deck now.
Yeah, the Brood deck now, or Shuri, any deck that's just okay doing that, right? Is just like so. Like, I would consider making those changes, right? I think it's honestly pretty unlikely for Sandman to ever be as good as he used to be, given the increasing power level of things right now. So I'm very comfortable. Like, Sandman to 5/4, encourage people to play some Sandman. Eliath -1, discourage people to play Eliath, and just see where that takes us would be my pitch. I think that's what I would try to do.
I like that. I like that proposition actually. I like that quite a bit. But like actually there is one actual game state. There's like one actual like game state change with reducing Eliath's power to 4, which is that, you know, now if you miss like a 50-50 Eliath, like it could still tie a Doctor Doom bot. But now if it's a 6/4, if you miss, you lose.
That's good.
To Doctor Doom.
Good.
Yeah, that's kind of good.
Actually good. Yes, that's a good point.
Kind of good, yeah. So that matters. It'd be interesting though. I don't mind that change at all.
You'd lose to Silk too. Ooh,
that is true.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I think I would. They should do that. They should. I've talked myself into it. They should do that.
All right.
Finally, Lambie, you have a new lady love in your life. She was brought to you by the most recent patch, and her name is Maria Hill. I have the utmost respect for y'all's relationship, but I gotta say, like, when I played her, I was like, okay, you know, this is very much better than Agent 13. And sometimes she would get me like a Shadow King or whatever, and it would be like, oh my god. Or a Luke Cage, it would be like, oh my god. But then sometimes she'd get me like, you know, a Hazmat, and it'd be like, okay, that's whatever. So how real is this relationship? How strong is your devotion to Maria Hill right now?
So this is weird to say, but it's also funny because I was talking to Harry the other day, Ordinary Harry. Our relationship with Mariah Hill is weirdly the same, which is very weird to say because both of our Mariah Hills always get Collector in the Loki deck. So like that was the first thing I talked about to him, and he said the exact same thing, like in the same like sentence or something. So it was hilarious. We always get Collector. Okay, no, but jokes aside, Mariah Hill definitely a sleeper buff. Like I looked at the patch and I was like, okay, then I went to sleep. I didn't think too much about it. Then next day I saw Mariah Hill again. I was like, wait. So this gets me Collector now in the Loki deck. It gets me Luke Cage sometimes. It gets me Daredevil. It could matter.
I've never gotten a Collector. 0 times.
I've gotten it like 5 times in one stream, by the way, but that's mad. But like, okay, so I got Collector, Daredevil, I got Luke Cage, Elsa, I got Angela. Okay, but obviously there are weird ones like Baron Mordo. So like, but like the thing is, because she only can get 2 cost cards now and she costs 1, it curves perfectly. It's like you go like Mariah Hill on 1, random 2 cost on 2 just to play it out. And sometimes that random 2 cost is a Collector, Angela or Elsa or Jeff. It's crazy strong. So like, I think this card is super stonks right now. I don't think it fits everywhere, but like it definitely fits in Loki. Firstly, random generation and the random 2 cost cards, like the top end of the good 2 cost cards benefit Loki super greatly. So I would say this card really fits in Loki right now. And I think it's actually staple in Loki. Just that I don't know where else you can fit her in, but I think she's like underplayed.
You think it's better than Snowguard?
Nah, you play both. You play both. She's not better than Snowguard.
It's like that. There was one extra slot in my build of Loki, right? And I used it for Mirage because I love her. You don't. I get it. It's okay.
I don't.
Do you have a different relationship? But that I was thinking it could be Maria Hill. And
Okay.
I was thinking it could be either Maria Hill or like a Cosmo, just so you have all the tech in your deck, and you just get to be like, I'm the aggressive deck with every tech card. You die. That's always a good place to be. But I do think that Maria Hill's like a pretty solid logical choice there. Just costing one is very, very powerful.
Yeah. I think the fact that she's one cause she's just like in line with the whole like cheap random generation so that you can Loki like on curve or like by turn 4, right? Because they replace themselves. I mean Snoga replaces +1, which is better, but like
Yeah.
Mariah Hill gets you a card that's mostly playable. Just cause it's 1 into 2. And if you don't want to do that, you just swap it out for Loki with a decent size hand. So yeah, Mariah Hill well positioned in a Loki deck. Hopefully can see her played in some other decks, but currently I have not tried it yet, but we'll see.
All right, y'all. This has been another episode of 8 Cubes with Lambie series and KMBest. This one's on Lambie's channel, so I'd like to remind you, if you like what you see, go subscribe to Lambie series. That's
Yes.
my boy. That's my boy right there. The
Thank you.
Conquest King. Thank you so much. Of course, as always, it's been a pleasure. Lambie, you want to lead him out?
All right. Thank you guys for being here. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
You like the finger guns?
Yes.